Hello, Internet. Long time no see. Welcome to Only Kind of Everything. And today we are going to be talking about the state of the video game industry. Now, obviously, we've had the state of play, the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro, the upcoming potential announcement of the Switch 2, everything that's been going on. And although I kind of wanted to do an individual video about all of it, I think a better way to handle this is to just talk about the industry as a whole, because I think that's a conversation that really needs to be had. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's good. I believe that we are in a situation for the gaming industry specifically, and I mean, there's other industries that are likely in this situation, but gaming is clearly the worst. That I really think we're getting ready to go into a crash of the video game market. I don't think there's any other way to cut that cake. If you look at what's going on, you have these massive companies, Microsoft and Sony. Mostly those two are the big ones responsible for it, but they're hoovering up these smaller developers. And then, especially in the case of Microsoft, they're closing a lot of these developers. And we're just in a point right now where the industry is going through so many layoffs that it's insane. You have these games that come out like Hi-Fi Rush. And I know this is a little older at this point to be speaking on it, but we're going to talk about that. Microsoft going on about how they want these smaller developers to create these, really exciting titles that can win awards and all that. And Hi-Fi Rush did that. It was that exact mission statement: smaller studio delivering a game that can win awards, and yet Microsoft closed them down. That just seems backwards to me. It's indicative of a larger problem at Microsoft, where they bought these studios with no real forethought as to what it was going to take to make sure that this was a good financial decision. And then they went ahead and they did the Activision Blizzard buyout, which, I've heard some numbers thrown around. I don't know if they're true. I'm not going to try and quote them. But if the numbers were true, then man, they probably could have supported these studios that they've closed for a while and really given these guys a chance to grow. But I digress. That's not what Microsoft did. They went ahead and they bought the Activision Blizzard, and here we are. And even that isn't helping Microsoft. We're at a point for gaming development, and I know I've said this in the past, where it's ridiculous that if you're starting development right now on a game, especially a AAA game, then you're not developing for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X or, whichever. You're developing for the next system. And on one hand, okay, I get that. But on the other hand, that's just insane to me that, we're in this situation where games that were releasing for the PlayStation 5, and I've been adamant that I don't think the PlayStation 5 and Series X were necessary. So with that being said, we're running into games that are coming out for the PlayStation 5 and Series X, and you're going, it's okay, but was it worth it? Is this new machine really worth the extra push and, cost to get? And I'm saying no. These developers you've got the PlayStation 5 Pro that's coming out now, and there's a reason I'm wording it this way. That, it's so powerful and blah, 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 blah. But we're not even really pushing what the PlayStation 5 and Series X can do. So we're adding a stronger system that already the developers who have been developing for, in the case of Concord, 8 years, they're already not pushing what the PlayStation 5 can do. And I'm not saying that was Concord's issue. I think Concord's issue was due to the development time. Had Concord come out 6 years ago, I think it'd have been a completely different story. It would have had a lot more room to grow. The market for character-based arena shooters like Overwatch was still fresh enough that they could have gotten a decent foothold, and they might have done. I guarantee you, they would have done better. But you tack an extra 6 years onto that, and Overwatch, for all its faults, is kind of where you're at. Team Fortress 2 is still where you're at. Rainbow Six Siege is where you're at. These games kind of have that market, and you have something like Concord, which, on the development side alone, I'm not going to get into some of the political garbage that goes along with game development and all that. Just from the game itself, they wanted to roll out weekly stories to keep you engaged with this story, with this world they had created. Man, if Overwatch would have done that, I don't think I would have ever left Overwatch. But they didn't. And that would have been great for the genre. And now this development team, the game, their passion project, their big, this is what we're going to do, is dead. It's gone. Like, I've never seen a game turn and close that quickly. Like, Anthem was kind of always the man. This was a bad idea game. And the new standard is less than 2 weeks. And that's insane for a game that was marketed so heavily to be killed that quickly. You can look at the potentials of Sony's upper echelon had changed. The live service was very much a Jim Ryan thing, and that's not the direction the company wants to seem to go now. But I digress. That's still crazy to me as a fan, as a consumer, to see that little faith in that product. But how does that kind of wrap into me thinking the gaming industry is going to crash? Well, it's an all-inclusive statement. You have the PlayStation 5 Pro, which is this super powerful system, but it's, $800, and it's all digital, and they don't include the vertical stand. They're literally taking pieces of the original PlayStation 5 that you got at launch, and they're saying we got to pay extra. Now, I know that there is a sect of people that just go, well, digital gaming for life, and that's what, and that's great. But as somebody who lives in I don't want to say rural America or a rural area, but internet, high quality, high speed internet isn't available everywhere. And I know I work with people who just don't have internet. They don't have, they have a little on their phones, but they don't have enough to do Fortnite, to do Call of Duty. And the fact that there are people that think that that the digital is the way to go, that's their right to have that opinion. But, I'm going to point to Google Stadia to this statement. Google, probably one of the, top 5 most powerful companies that could do something like this with the Stadia, and Google couldn't get it right. It's an all streaming, all digital service system, and it failed. And I think a big reason it failed, I don't think it was a cost point. I really do think, there was some other issues that definitely plagued it. I won't say that there wasn't. They didn't have the same game reach as a PlayStation and an Xbox. I see that and I understand that. But I think the reason these developers didn't go to the Stadia is because they were not seeing a good reach on these all digital systems. And I think the PS5 Pro is proof, at least in my mind, that going completely all digital, just because it's a powerhouse system doesn't necessarily mean that that's what people want. You know, all of the circles that I lurk about in and that I am in, the general consensus seems to just be the PlayStation 5 Pro is a waste. You don't need it. It's not something that most people are excited for. And that's telling to me. Sony, from the PS4 till, I would say now, Sony has had very little stumbling. Microsoft has had their hits and misses, and I do prefer Sony over Microsoft, and I'm not trying to throw hate to either company. I want this to be, an unbiased call to action or just an unbiased observation as best as it can be. Microsoft has stumbled a lot since the 360, whereas Sony has really taken strong strides and been a very customer-first company. The PlayStation 5 Pro seems to be a very large jaunt in the direction that the not just the general public, but the public as a whole seems to not agree with. The public sees the PlayStation 5 Pro as a cash grab. And these games that are, your Grand Theft Auto 6s, your Final Fantasy Rebirths, whatever the next part of Final Fantasy is going to be, your Gears of War E-Day, your King of Fighters, your Dragon Ball Sparking Zeros. I would say the only game in that entire list that might even remotely, and I'm not going to say need, but would remotely benefit from what these, teraflops of power and these PlayStation 5 Pros type systems can do is going to be Grand Theft Auto 6. But even then, 6 years in development, 10 years, over 10 years in development, you have to look at the situation and say, is the technology that you started with, that you're looking at it and going, well, this goes back to even an earlier statement. But if your development cycle is, 6 to 8 years, and you're looking at the market, well, you're developing ideally with what's, you're not trying to develop for what's not there yet. You're developing for, maybe the high end of what's currently available. And what we're seeing is these high end of what's currently available is it's not just getting surpassed in terms of what these systems can do, but they're also just kind of not they're from my standpoint, they're not changing enough to warrant these systems. From the power standpoint, there's enough change that you look at it and go, well, what you're building on didn't even exist, or what's current now didn't even exist when you were building this. So how can you hope to achieve what these systems are setting out to do? Steady 30 FPS, 60 FPS is what people would love to see, but steady 30 seems to be like well, come on. And then you move to the PC side of things. Again, as somebody who's not a fan of digital, I'm not a big fan of the PC side of things. I do have a gaming PC. I don't use it a lot, but I get the appeal of these PCs and of these systems because you have, you can customize these systems, and you can run Elden Ring and you can run Minecraft and it looks stunning. But is that, and that's kind of the PC side of it. PC is, I'm not going to discount it because it is a very viable medium for gaming. But PC I've always felt is more of I want to customize my gaming experience versus the console gaming market, which is I want to just be able to play. I don't need my games to look, like I'm peeling open a brand new wall and it's, oh, this is amazing, all these graphics, blah blah blah. I don't think that's what the console market was originally designed for. I think the console market was designed to be a plug and play, for no better terminology. You plug your console in, you don't have a whole lot of setup to do, and then you can play the games. And that was kind of the idea, and I think that even in of itself is lost, that these developers are so obsessed with these games that look hyper realistic and hyper pretty that I think we're maybe losing sight of what I would say made gaming fun growing up, and kind of made it the pastime that a lot of people my age remember, and that's that gaming should be fun. I'm not saying that it's not fun now, but people are so worried and so obsessed with, my game needs to look X good and blah. And yet, I remember going and playing, Mischief Makers on the Nintendo 64, and it, I don't know the frames per second it ran, but it ran good. And, we were happy with that, even going back and playing the NES and SNES. Those games were fun, and they didn't need to look the best. And I think that's something that maybe needs to be looked at from a development standpoint right now, is that, are we making games that are fun, like truly fun? Something that somebody is going to want to pick up in 15 years type of fun? Or are we just making a game that's really, really, really pretty, and the story, and story is important, but are we just making an experience that people are going to, in 15 years, they're not going to care about? And I think that's something that maybe needs to be looked at in the industry, because I really am concerned that within the next 5 years or so, the gaming industry is going to crash on itself. There's not enough support. You could only drain people as much, so much. People are buying less games because, the perception is they cost more. I mean, if you do the math, they're as cheap as ever, but $70 for a game is a lot. And I know I am buying less games. It's not like it was on the PS2 era, where you could, there might be 25 racing games, quote unquote, and all of them are at least okay in their own right. There might not be great games, but they're not bad. Your Twisted Metals, your Need for Speeds started small. They got bigger, but they started small. And I think that's just this weird thing that the industry is in. But I don't want to ramble too much, guys. I already have rambled a lot. I do hope that this spurs some conversation in the comments on our Facebook page, on our X page. But I wanted to get out there, kind of talk about these things, and share, I guess, my concern that the gaming industry really needs to stop being so money grubbing. This idea that you don't own your digital game when you buy it, that you don't, when you do these microtransactions, these microtransaction heavy games, the idea that a single player experience isn't what people want, and yet Baldur's Gate 3 did amazing. No microtransactions. It was generally a complete game. They patched some stuff to make it better, but they didn't add they don't think they added any major content updates. I might be wrong, but I know there was no paid DLC or anything. But the point is, I really, really hope that I'm wrong on this, and that here in, a couple years, everything's going to be fine and dandy. But boy, howdy, it's not. It doesn't feel like the ship is sailing that way. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. And I will see all of you in the next video. Bye!